The men who buy your gold clean it differently than you do. I found that out the hard way, standing at a table at a show in Nevada with a piece I'd spent a week making pretty, watching a dealer turn it over twice and offer me melt. Not specimen price, melt. And the fellow at the next table over had a rock half as bright as mine, still wearing its dirt, and he got 3 times the money for it. That is not bad luck, and it is not favoritism. It's that there's a whole layer of chemistry sitting under the words clean your specimens, and almost nobody in this hobby talks about it, because the people who understand it are the same people writing you the check. So here's what you're getting. 6 things about hydrogen peroxide and gold specimens, what it actually does to your rock, what it does to the gold inside your rock, the exact field checks and soak times I use, and what a specimen is worth before and after you get done with it. The last one on the list has quietly cost men more gold than the other 5 put together, and most of them never even knew it left. I want to hear what you soaked your very first specimen in. Before any of that makes sense, you need to know one plain fact about gold, and it's the fact everything else in this video hangs on. Gold does not react. Not with air, not with water, not with hydrogen peroxide, not with your dish soap. That's why it's still sitting shiny in a creek after being tumbled downhill for 100,000 years while everything around it rusted into mud. Hydrogen peroxide is an oxidizer, and an oxidizer's whole job is to hand oxygen to something that wants it. Gold does not want it. So on its own, in the bottle you buy at the drugstore, peroxide cannot hurt the gold in your specimen. But your specimen isn't gold. Your specimen is a rock with gold in it. And every other thing in that rock does want oxygen. The rusty cement holding the fine stuff in place wants it. The brassy pyrite crystals sitting next to your gold want it desperately. And the moment you add a second chemical to the jar, that inert forever gold stops being inert at all. Which is the part almost nobody understands until it's already gone down the drain. That's the whole engine of this video. Peroxide isn't good or bad. Peroxide is a tool that goes after everything in the rock except the one thing you care about, and whether that helps you or ruins you depends entirely on what else is in there. Which brings up the rock that fools more people than any other on this subject, and I'm going to keep coming back to it. Pyrite. Brassy, hard, bright in the sun, sitting right in the same quartz your gold is in. Peroxide has a very particular appetite for pyrite, and if you don't know how to tell one from the other in 5 seconds with your bare hands, this is where the trouble starts. Later on, I'll tell you what I once pulled out of a coffee filter after a cleaning session, because that number changed how I do this permanently. The first thing peroxide is genuinely good for is the film. Not the stain, not the crust, the film. Pull a piece of gold-bearing quartz out of a wet creek bank and there's a slick gray-green skin on it from algae, rotted leaf matter, root hairs down in the crevices, and that fine black organic mud that gets into every pit in the surface. It reads as dirty rock, so men take a brush to it and get nowhere because scrubbing a slime layer just polishes it. 3% drugstore peroxide takes it apart because organic material is exactly what peroxide was designed to attack. Put the piece in a glass jar, never metal, and cover it with about ½ an inch of liquid over the top of the rock, roughly the thickness of your little finger. Leave it 20 to 30 minutes. You'll see fine bubbles crawling out of the crevices, and when you pull it, a soft toothbrush takes the loosened film off in one pass. Rinse in distilled water if you have it, tap water if you don't, and let it dry completely. The mistake here is the brush. I've watched men reach for a brass or steel wire brush on gold-bearing quartz, and 2 things go wrong. Brass leaves yellow smears in the pits, which will make a buyer look at you sideways because it mimics the very thing you're selling, and steel leaves iron dust that rusts orange in a month and puts a stain on your rock that wasn't there when you found it. Nylon or a wood pick, nothing harder. And now the part where I disagree with about 90% of what gets said online about this. The standard advice is to soak specimens in peroxide overnight or for a couple days on the theory that longer is stronger. That's backwards, and the reason why is the second thing on this list. Watch what happens when you drop a rust-stained rock into peroxide. It foams hard. Big, lively bubbles, sometimes enough to run over the lip of the jar, and every man who sees it thinks the same thing, which is that the stain is dissolving. It isn't. Iron oxide and black manganese are catalysts for hydrogen peroxide, meaning they make it fall apart into plain water and oxygen gas without being consumed themselves. That foam is your peroxide dying. The rust is just standing there watching. 3% peroxide removes almost none of the iron stain you're looking at. None. It makes noise. Here's the test, and you can run it this weekend with a kitchen scale. Weigh your specimen dry to the 1/10 of a gram. Soak it overnight in peroxide. Dry it fully and weigh it again. On the dozen or so pieces I've logged in my notebook doing this, the change was inside the noise of the scale, and the stain looked the same once it was dry. That last word is doing a lot of work. Wet quartz always looks cleaner than dry quartz because water fills the microscopic pits and light passes through instead of scattering. So a man pulls his rock out of the jar, sees bright white quartz and yellow gold flashing, and concludes it's working beautifully. Then it dries, and it's gray and rusty again, so he soaks it another 2 days. What actually lifts iron stain out of quartz is oxalic acid, the powder sold as wood bleach in a warm bath over hours, and even that has a cost I'll get to. Judge a specimen dry and in the shade. Always. Which matters double because the thing that overnight soak really does strip off is something you can never put back. Quick pause here. Everything I just walked through, and dozens more tricks like it, is inside the Gold Prospector's Bible. 2026 edition. 50 field-tested tricks to stop getting skunked. Right now it comes with the 30-day skunk-proof roadmap completely free. A step-by-step 4-week plan to pick your ground, test smarter, and find your first real color. Link in the description. QR code on your screen. This is the season you stop guessing where the gold is. Most men scrub until the rock looks like it came out of a jewelry case. And that is the exact moment the price falls off it. A natural specimen carries a surface. Desert placer gold wears a thin, reddish-brown skin of iron and caliche in the low spots. Vein material out of a hard rock district carries a particular dull sheen on the quartz and a soft boundary where the gold meets the rock. Collectors and dealers read that surface the way you read a creek bank, and it tells them the piece came out of the ground and not out of somebody's garage. Strip it all off, brighten every face, sharpen every edge, and you've erased the provenance. The rock is still gold. It just stopped being a specimen. I ruined the best piece I ever took out of the ground learning this. Palm-sized, about 4 inches across, roughly the size of a bar of soap, with a seam of coarse gold running through dirty gray quartz. I spent an evening on it with oxalic acid and a brass brush and got it white as a bathroom tile. Took it to that show, and the dealer said one word to me. Helped. Meaning it looked worked on, and he'd only pay what the metal weighed. My best guess is I turned somewhere around $600 into $200, and I can't undo it, because you cannot put a 100-year-old skin back on a rock. So here's what I do now, and it costs nothing. Photograph the piece before you touch it, 3 angles on a gray towel. Then clean it, but leave one witness patch untouched on the back, about 3/4 of an inch across, roughly the size of a nickel. That patch proves what the rock looked like when it came out. And if the gold is already visible without cleaning, stop. The only real job of cleaning a specimen is making the gold visible. And once it is, every further minute you spend is subtracting money. Which becomes serious when you find out what's sitting a hair under that surface. Look, I'll be straight with you. The 50 field-tested tricks in the Bible run across 5 chapters, and it comes with the printable 10-minute Streamside checklist plus that 30-day roadmap still included free. I don't know how long that gift stays in the bundle. If you've been watching these videos thinking this could finally be your season, that's the move. Link in the description below. QR code on screen. Make this the year you find your first real color. Sulfides are where peroxide turns on you. Pyrite and the arsenic-bearing brassy stuff that runs with gold in a lot of districts are exactly what an oxidizer wants. Drop a specimen with visible pyrite into 3% peroxide, and inside 20 minutes, you'll see a dull haze come over the brassy faces. What's happening is that the peroxide is converting the sulfide into iron sulfate and free acid, and the sulfate blooms out as a yellowish-brown crust that then bleeds fresh rust into every crack in your white quartz, permanently. You take a specimen with bright, brassy crystals sitting next to gold, which is a beautiful and honest thing that collectors pay for, and you hand back a rock with dull gray pockmarks and orange streaks. I know what you're thinking right now, and you're right to think it. If it's brassy, isn't that just fool's gold? And who cares if it goes dull? Two answers. First, pyrite in a gold specimen is not a flaw, it's evidence, and it's part of what makes a hard rock piece worth more than its weight. Second, and this is the part that gets people, you had better be certain which one you're looking at before you soak it. Take a knife point to the grain. Pyrite is brittle and it shatters into powder under the tip, and it leaves a greenish-black mark if you drag it across an unglazed tile or the rough bottom of a coffee mug. Gold dense. It smears, it takes the shape of the point, and it streaks yellow. And carry the piece from sunlight into shade. Pyrite goes flat and gray the second the direct light comes off it. Gold stays the same warm yellow in your shadow. 5 seconds, no chemicals, and it settles the question every time. My rule now is simple. Any brassy metal anywhere on the piece and the peroxide bottle stays capped. Dry brush, a wooden or dental pick, distilled water, and patience. I do not know why some pyrite in the same creek goes off in minutes, and other pyrite barely reacts at all. I've had fine sooty pyrite from one bank haze over inside 10 minutes, and blocky cubes out of a wash a mile away sit for 2 days looking untouched, and I can't tell you the reason. Arsenic content, crystal size, something in how it weathered. What I know is what my notebook says, which is that the fine-grained stuff is always the fast one. So if the brassy material looks like dust rather than cubes, treat it as fragile. There's a rock in a Texas auction catalog that makes the point better than I can. 1989 Sonora, Mexico, a man out with an entry-level metal detector on ground that had been worked over and over by better-equipped men before him. He dug a nugget shaped like a boot. About 389 troy ounces, call it 26 pounds of gold in one piece. That's the boot of Cortez, and when Heritage Auctions sold it in 2008, it brought over $1 million, far more than the metal in it was worth on the market that day. Here's the part that belongs in this video. It's sold as a shape. Nobody polished it into a bar. Nobody scrubbed it bright. Its value was in being exactly the object the ground handed over, and every honest surface on it was part of the price. 2 lessons for a man with a jar of peroxide in his garage. Worked over ground still holds the biggest pieces, and the ground's own fingerprints on a piece of gold are worth money. That same oxidizing action does one more thing, and it happens somewhere you cannot watch it. Inside the rock. A lot of specimens, especially out of desert placer and out of weathered vein material near the surface, are not solid quartz at all. They're a crumbly, rusty cement, iron oxide and clay glued around quartz fragments, and the fine gold is held in that cement like raisins in a biscuit. Soak that, agitate it, brush it, and the cement gives up. The coarse gold you can see stays put. The flour gold you never saw, the specks under 30 mesh, sitting down in the pores, quietly washes out and goes wherever your rinse water goes. Which is why I said I'd come back to the coffee filter. First time I bothered to run my spent cleaning water through one, I was working 4 pieces of rusty conglomerate out of a dry wash. I dried the filter on the wood stove, tapped it out onto a black tray, and put a loop on it. 0.2 of a gram of fine gold, about what a few grains of rice weigh, and every bit of it had come out of rocks I thought I was improving. That's not a fortune. But it was 5 or 6 sessions a year of that going down my shop sink, and it's free to stop. So work over a gold pan, never over a sink. Pour the spent liquid through a paper coffee filter, let it dry all the way, and check it under a loop or a 10-power hand lens before you throw it out. Cheap takes 2 minutes. Now the honest part, because peroxide fails outright in more situations than it succeeds. It will not touch hard iron stain locked into the quartz itself, only the loose surface grime. It does nothing to black manganese coatings, which laugh at it. It does nothing to the white calcite crust you get on limestone country specimens. and it barely works cold. Below about 50 degrees, cool enough that you want a jacket on, 3% peroxide is so sluggish that the soak is a waste of an evening, which is exactly why men who clean in an unheated garage in February conclude their bottle is dead. On a crumbly ironstone piece, I skip chemicals entirely because I'd rather have a dirty specimen than a pile of gravel and a coffee filter full of what used to be my rock. Dry brushing and a distilled water soak, and if the stain has to go, warm oxalic acid slowly with the witness patch protected. And now the one that has cost men more gold than every other item on this list combined. And it starts with a question. What happens when a man decides the peroxide is working too slowly and reaches for something stronger to help it along? Muriatic acid, the pool supply stuff, is hydrochloric acid, and by itself it will not dissolve gold. Not in a week. Hydrogen peroxide by itself will not dissolve gold either, and I told you that at the start. Put the two in the same jar and they will dissolve gold, and they'll do it at room temperature on your workbench. That combination is a standard method in the refining trade for exactly that purpose. The peroxide oxidizes the gold just enough for the chloride to grab it and carry it away into solution, and the gold goes invisible. Not black, not dull, gone, dissolved, sitting in the liquid as a clear to faintly yellow-green solution that a man tips into his drain without a second thought. This is the trap. And it's a very easy one to fall into because both bottles are sold as household products, and every forum on Earth recommends muriatic acid for cleaning rust off rock. So, a fellow soaks his specimen in acid, gets impatient, remembers he's got a brown bottle of peroxide on the shelf, and adds a splash to speed things up. He isn't cleaning his specimen anymore, he's refining it. In the loosest sense, and the fine gold on every exposed surface is coming off first because it has the most surface for its weight. The coarse gold survives, more or less, so the rock still looks like a specimen, and he never suspects a thing. All he knows is the piece somehow lost its sparkle and the buyer offered less than he expected. 2 hard rules, and I'll say them plain. Never mix peroxide with any acid in a jar with gold in it. Never mix peroxide or acid with bleach in any amount for any reason, because that gives you chlorine gas, and there are men in this hobby who've spent a night in an emergency room over exactly that. Work outdoors or with the door open regardless. Here's your field check, and it takes 5 seconds. Look at the liquid, not the rock. If your rinse or soak water has any yellow or green tint to it at all, and it started out clear, you have gold in solution right now. Stop, don't pour it out. Save every drop in a labeled jug because that gold is recoverable by a refiner or by anyone in your club who does it properly. My buddy who runs a club a couple states east of me keeps a 5-gallon carboy of exactly that on a shelf. And once a year it comes back to the members as a very small check that shouldn't exist at all. If peroxide has ever cost you gold, I want to know which piece. So here's where you stand now. You know peroxide can't touch your gold on its own and does a genuinely good job on organic film in 20 or 30 minutes. You know the foam is the peroxide dying and not the rust dissolving. And you know to judge a rock dry and in the shade. You know a witness patch the size of a nickel protects your price. And you know brassy sulfides are the one thing that must never see the inside of that jar. And you can tell them from gold with a knife point and a step into your own shadow. You know to clean over a pan and read the filter. And you know what 2 harmless bottles do when they meet. None of this makes you find more gold this Saturday. It stops you from losing the gold you already found, and after 30-odd years, I'll tell you those are worth about the same. If you'd rather not be the man who spent an evening turning a $600 rock into a $200 rock, go ahead and subscribe because that's most of what I do here. Next time I want to get into oxalic acid properly, how hot, how long, and the one kind of specimen it destroys. Good luck out there, gold hunter. Keep the lid on the brown bottle until you know what's in your rock.